Welcome to another episode of the Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast, where we offer actions and steps you can take today to start balancing your hormones naturally. This is your podcast host, Leah Brueggemann. I am a functional diagnostic nutritional practitioner. I am honored and excited to be your guide on your journey to better understanding your hormonal health and how it affects your everyday life. All right, ladies, welcome back to another episode of the Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast. I have a super special guest for you. So this is Dr. Greg Mongeon. I think I said that correctly. We'll just kind of roll with it. Yeah. I hope you feel really honored. I actually don't have men on the podcast very often.
I'm the guy. I love it.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of guests, and I think that you are the fourth one. So we don't have a lot of men on here. So I'm very excited to chat with you. So he is a functional medicine doctor, but you used to be a chiropractor, correct?
Yeah, original degree as a chiropractor and then jumped into the world of functional medicine and haven't looked back.
So can you walk me through, how did this start?
Oh my gosh, I would love to. Okay. So back in the 1980s, a member of our church adopted a little boy from Colombia. And unbeknownst to them, he had autism.
Okay.
And I had my first experience with not just autism, but a savant. So this little boy, who's not a little boy anymore, his name is Noah. And if you'd go to Noah's house, Noah would look at you, and then he'd go to their grand piano and play the most majestic piece of music you've ever heard in your life. And then Norma, his mom, would say, "Greg, that's your piece." And I was like, no way. So in high school, I'm going to date myself a little bit. In 1988, I did my first research project on autism. By the way, at that time, there were two pieces of research in the world on autism. And I was intrigued. And this was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Well, fast forward, I knew that I wanted to be in medicine. And now I'm in my first year of my medical studies. And then I get a phone call from my dad. My dad at the time was 50. And my dad called all of us boys this day and said, "Guys, I have cancer. Would you be to talk to your professors, see if you can make some alterations and join our family at the Mayo Clinic? I need to have a pretty massive surgery." And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. And I, Leah, I believe that the Lord puts things in our path where I can put you on this square of carpet where I was standing at 7608 Newton Avenue South when I got that phone call from my dad, because I knew that was that, not at the time, but looking back, I knew that was a huge pivot for me. So we fast forward to the Mayo Clinic, and my dad is 6'5", 200-pound, tall, skinny dude. And he ended up having bladder cancer. And I will never, ever forget, my dad was on the gurney about to get wheeled into surgery. And all of us, I'm one of four boys, and we were all gathered around with mom. And my dad takes off his wedding ring and he hands it to me. And he says, "Greg, if I don't come out, I want you to have this." And it's like 4 years later, and I still get choked up about it. And I was like, hell no, whoa. Like, how does this work? I mean, originally I thought I was going to be a doctor and I wanted to help people, and I got that, but I didn't really, there wasn't a gut understanding of why are we doing this?
Yeah.
So not to leave people hanging, the Mayo Clinic, I mean, Western medicine is amazing at emergency medicine. So they took out my dad's bladder, they took out his prostate, they took a chunk of his small intestine, made a new bladder, and 24 years later, my dad is alive.
Yes.
But during that time, I had to have some really gut-wrenching conversations of my dad was 50. So I was like, what the hell? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What's my true why behind this? Mm-hmm. And just a blessing. And I got into my very first practice after my medical training. And I had a mom walk into our clinic. She was from this little Baptist church on the hill, great family. And she had 3 little boys, 2 of which were severely autistic. Full circle. And she said to me, "Can you help us?" And I had some insight into functional medicine. I had some interest. Obviously, I had this huge passion with autism. And I was like, yes, yeah, we're going to do this. So I actually became a what's called a DAN doctor, which stands for Defeat Autism Now, which I jumped into the biochemistry of the neurology and the pathophysiology and the GI of all this stuff. And that got us into hyperbaric oxygen therapy and blood work and IV therapy. And I will never, ever, ever forget the day when one of the little boys that we're treating for the very first time in his life looked his mommy in the eyes. And
Yeah.
there wasn't a dry eye in the room. And then I went, okay, we're on to something. Now, again, my traditional training is as a chiropractor. When people think of a chiropractor, they think of like cracking your neck and your back.
Yep.
What my chiropractic education gave me was a philosophy. And the philosophy it gave me is the body is intricately designed. There's 75 trillion cells. They're all intricately put together. I also have worked on my PhD in neurology, so I love neurology and how neurology works. And the body responds appropriately to its environment. So I came to the plate with this basis, not that, a lot of medicine's like, oh, I'm so sorry, your body it's gone rogue and it's doing its own thing. And that just never resonated with me. So I came to the plate with that basis. And then so from treating kids with autism and doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy to I actually worked for a professional wrestler for a period of time.
You just have been all over.
It's been crazy. It's been crazy. So this gentleman was an Olympic gold medalist. His name's Jordan Burroughs. He's probably one of the most well-known freestyle wrestlers in the world. I would run labs on Jordan, and his labs would give me an idea of like, how do we put together his nutrition? What supplements, if any, should we take? But I would also, because I know that you're a big hormone gal, I would also draw his labs in different states of training.
Yes.
And
so cool.
Right, like who are you walking into Olympic trials versus who are you 90 days after that? And then my mom's super dear to me. My mom was actually a home ec major in college, which is like, I don't think there's even such thing anymore.
Yeah.
She was on a big ranch in North Dakota. We had a huge garden growing up. So I learned how to cook from scratch as a young boy. So when I would travel with this wrestler, he was like, wait, you can cook? I was like, oh, yes, I can cook. So I actually would travel with him and I would cook his meals to help him make weight. And then I would prepare his meals for between the matches so that he could sustain his energy. So we did that for a period of time. And then probably in the last, I'd say 7 to 10 years, I've really become interested in tough cases. I'm very curious. I probably have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I love it because it just gives me this very curious soul. And autoimmunity and chronic infection is really where I live now. And I believe the body doesn't need help healing. It just needs no interference.
Yeah.
It's just like, let's just get things out of the way and it can do amazing things. And I love the journey. I think, I talked, we've done a podcast before, and we even talked about like how a lot of people in the medical community believe that their medical training was everything that they'll ever need forever in their career. And there is nothing further from the truth. Number one, functional medicine especially is still a very young profession. And I remember when I had to unlearn something for the first time. Like, wait. I learned it this way 20 years ago. And all of the research says, well, I'm sorry, that's no longer the fact. And I remember going, oh my goodness. And then I remember getting excited about it. I'm like, oh, that means we're on like the cutting edge of these things. So fast forward, I would say that the average person that finds us now has unresolved autoimmunity. And I don't mean to sound morbid, but I love autoimmunity. I love understanding. And my philosophy is actually the opposite of most Western medical practitioners. And then obviously when you do the right testing, you figure out why that autoimmunity is there, which takes you down a whole other crazy rabbit trail of figuring things out. So full circle. We've been blessed to live kind of all over the world. We talked about living in Hawaii.
Yeah, so cool.
And so we've lived in Nebraska and Utah and Hawaii. And I live here now in the Minneapolis area of Minnesota. I am married to a drop dead gorgeous woman that her and I have 5 babies together, aging from 18 down to 5. And life is busy and it's good. And I was listening to a book this morning. By the way, if most people have seen me on TikTok, you're going to see me out for a walk. Listening to a book this morning by a pastor, and he talked about just this vision, like, why do you truly do what you do? And I think it's important for us in the business world to have the opportunity to circle back and go, okay, why am I doing this? I mean, for some people, you have a job because you need to put groceries on the table, though there's got to be something beyond that. And I sat in a previous clinic that we had because we've grown a bunch, and I wrote on the whiteboard, Leah, I wrote, we create epic family reunions. And what that means to me is, so I have 5 kids. I close my eyes and I think of what's it going to be like 50 years from now when I am like rolling on the ground with my great grandchildren.
Yeah.
And like you, well, actually, all of your patients are females. I would say 90% of our patients are females. I want to give that woman the tools that she deserves so that she can be the mom, the grandma, the partner, the spouse, the daughter that she wants to be at those events. So I think it's important for us to have that vision figured out. So
Yeah.
our clinic has ebbed and flowed a bunch. We have an amazing team now. I think we're 15 members in our team. We have an amazing clinic here, like I said, in the Minneapolis area, and I have never worked a day in my life. I tell my patients the day it feels like work, I quit. And
Yeah.
I have no intention of quitting at this point because it's so fun I love when women, and you've seen this too, when they have hope.
Yep.
When they realize like, oh my gosh, like there is something, or you actually listen to me. Like that is such a rare commodity so far. So yeah, so that leads us to where we are here.
Full circle. I have to totally agree with you there. I think the biggest compliment I hear is actually, I will get this from husbands a lot. Like they will send an email or send a message and be like, I have my wife back. And I'm just like, that, if you've been sick for so long, you just feel like you're stumbling around. So I totally get that. And I have to like crack up that you started in autism because my youngest brother is special needs. He has a chromosome disorder. It doesn't even have a name. It's so rare. And he was misdiagnosed for a while when he was really little, first with cerebral palsy, then autism. We had a hyperbaric oxygen chamber like in our basement. So
right on.
I totally get that. But I want to like walk into this autoimmune a little bit because that's how I actually found you on TikTok. That's how I found you, which you have to tell me why you got on TikTok because I don't see a lot of like functional doctors on TikTok, and like your take on it is very different because I will tell you, I was scrolling and I see this guy talking and I was like, I'm going to scroll. And you said something about mold or healing your body. Like you need to, it's not what you think it is. So I was like, okay, you got me. I'm going to listen while you walk. And so you're walking and the whole time I'm like, wow, this is really cool. But then also, how are you holding conversation for this long on a TikTok video? Because from like a marketing standpoint, people are always like, oh, people aren't going to listen to long form, but you did such a great job of educating. So why TikTok?
That's so good. Well, let me go back a few years. I had a patient about 15 years ago, and I have this very curious soul. Love of learning is one of my strong suits. So I love diving into things. And I had a patient say to me, Dr. Greg, who do you think you are? Knowing what you know and not sharing it with everybody.
Oh, snap.
And I was like, oh, okay. Ugh. So it was about a year ago. I was actually at the big Minnesota State Fair with my family, and one of our team members is like, Dr. Greg, what do you think about putting something out on TikTok? And I was like, dude, I am not a 13-year-old that's going to do a dance. And he's like, no, we see some trends. So, so we simply and we've from day one, we've taken this concept of we are here to be a blessing. We are here to educate. We are not here to ask for anything. We are here, much like why this podcast exists. We are here to just educate people, to help them make good decisions. So we made one video, and all of a sudden one of my team members is like flooding me with these questions because, just so spoiler alert, I don't manage TikTok. I have an amazing team that helps me with that. I help answer the questions, but I honestly don't even have it on my phone. So we start getting these questions, and he's like, I think we're onto something. And it has just been a blessing. So again, if you guys have seen me on TikTok, I usually am going out for a walk. Yeah. And I just kind of searched my soul, like what do I think people want to hear about? What can I talk about? What are some nuggets that I can give without there being any need for like, okay, I need a patient or I need you to buy a bottle of vitamins, which that doesn't work. So it has been just neat to number one, like be in tune with like, what are people hearing? Because I still am the main clinician in this practice. So every single patient goes through me. So I'm having these conversations. I'm having these deep dives. I'm hearing these stories. And by the way, I tell almost every woman before we start talking, like, thank you, because I know what it takes to say, I need help. Like even people listening to this right now, they're like, oh, this is good stuff and I should do that. And then all of a sudden, all of these voices start saying things to them, right? Like, you've tried this before. How much is it going to cost? You're not worth it. Whatever, fill in the blank. And I get what it takes to have a conversation like that. So yeah, kind of on a whim, I was dared to create a video. And since then, we haven't looked back, and it worked out. And I love the platform to share and to be real and to not expect anything in return. And we've had just some absolutely amazing conversations with people literally around the world. You and I have probably a lot of crossover in our groups, and just these people want to be empowered. And I will also lovingly say this: with what's happening in the world, there is people that are like, all right, time out. I need to take control. I'm not sure I believe all of the things that I'm hearing about what I should or shouldn't do. And I actually remember seeing a billboard about 5 years ago, and it was actually a local hospital. And the billboard said, regaining your trust. And the first thing that my brain says is because you knew that you lost it, lost trust. So I love that people are searching. I'll also say that what we do is not for everybody. Like, I'm not here to say, if you're doing that, that's no good. Goodness gracious, no. And I even love being on calls like this with other clinicians, because there is more than enough to go around. And if we can encourage each other and help each other out, I love the concept of how the tide raises all ships. And I love being a part of the tide, but also being one of the ships in the bay that gets raised by that.
I got asked a question the other day on Instagram, and I think it's very pertinent here. And they asked, how come there are so many different practitioners that are in, functional world, and doctors in the functional world, and they all say different things? And I'm like, well, like we talked about, not all are created equal, but there are multiple ways to skin a cat, depending on how you are going about things. So I know that you have a very different take when it comes to working with your patients. So can you talk to me about how you kind of developed that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So 20 years ago, if someone was one of our patients, we still run labs, or I love running labs. So I'd run labs, and we'd put together a game plan. And then I'd be like, okay, Leah, here you go. Knock your socks off. If you need me, I'm here. And then they would get a hold of us, and I was like, uh-oh, all we're doing is putting out fires.
Yeah.
We're not helping people get better. So then we got smart. At least we thought we were smart. And then we said, okay, you can have a once a month visit. So we would do once a month visits. And then I would get on that call with someone like yourself, Leah, and you'd say, okay, hey doc, okay, 3 weeks ago, this, and this happened to me. And I was like, oh crap, we should have been on a call 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
So about 5 years ago, I did a focus group with some of my patients. And I, in a very raw setting, said, how can we be better for you? And one of these ladies was like, we need better access to you. And then one of the other ladies said, what would it look like if we had unlimited access to your team? And of course, the business person was like, how in the world are you going to do that? Like, how would you do that? That's impossible. Because for your listeners, the average doctor in the United States has between 750 and 1,000 patients. Yeah. So if you gave 1,000 people unlimited access to you, like, I hope that you have zero life outside of your practice.
Yeah.
But I took heed. I've learned, number one, as a clinician and as a physician, I work for the patient. Yes, I have education. Yes, I have experience. Yes, I have background. But at the end of the day, I work for them. So it was at that time that we figured it out. So if someone is a patient of ours now, they get unlimited access to our team. And our team is quite sizable. And also the average clinician in our practice has only between 50 and 60 patients.
Okay.
So that means that they actually have the bandwidth to know who is that person, what are they going through, what their labs show, what are we trying to use in our protocol. So, and I love technology. I've done telemedicine long before COVID made it cool. So it could be a Zoom call, a phone call. Even we use a piece of software where you can text your clinician on the
Yeah.
fly. And because of the type of work that we do chronic infection and chronic toxicity, and we are essentially going in and doing these mass eviction notices with these pathogens. I tell patients, it's not if you're going to have a curveball, it's when and how often. And the people just love the fact that they know that they're supported, that if they have a question, that it will be answered. And still to this day, when I go to medical conferences and my colleagues ask me about our approach, I literally get made fun of still about how we take care of people. Because and we talked about this in your podcast, or the podcast that I did with you, is they get 7 minutes.
Yeah.
They get 7 minutes. And also there's a gold standard in that world. So even to take this flip, I will tell you, it is so welcomed for them to be like, oh my gosh, like I've never heard of that. And then to condition them on how to use it properly is just clutch. So yes, we take a very different approach to how we take care of it during the practice.
I think so. When I have one-on-one clients, which there's one Leah, there's not that many people. I have an app where they can, message me, throughout the week. And I've had so many people like the same thing. They're like, that's the game changer, because like, let's say your call is in 2 weeks or your call is once a week, but it's in this moment that they're panicking and they're having an issue, or they're having a reaction to a supplement, or maybe they're having a herx from like a die off. And that's when they need help to not quit. Right. And if you're only seeing your doctor once a month, like, what's going to make you go back to that appointment? If you had a bad reaction 3 weeks ago, you're just like, well, screw this, it's not working.
Totally. Or the person that has done the do-it-yourself program, right? And they're like, I'll just go, I got the recipe card, I'm going to follow it. And the second they're thrown a curveball, they abandon ship.
Yep.
Because they don't know what to do.
Yeah. And I think that's such a disservice. I've been asked so many times to make like a course that's just passive that you can just follow. And I'm like, I don't think you'll see results.
I'll tell you what, I think I said this on a podcast last week. I had a call with one of my colleagues a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, all right, dude, here's what we do. Everybody does a 4-month program and everybody gets the exact same supplements. And it's like $7,500. And I sat there with this look on my face, like, and what I wanted to say, and I'll probably say it next time I talk to him, is shame on you. Yeah. Shame on you. Like, are you serious? I mean, you're taking advantage of people that are hurt and not feeling well, and they don't even know what their options are. Mm-hmm. So there's got to be, this term called biochemical individuality has to be appreciated. Everyone has a different journey. Everyone has different emotional and mental components that are tossed into the stew as well. Mm-hmm. So, what it did for me, Leah, and having that conversation was it completely validated the fact that we're doing it right.
Yeah.
Not the easy way, but it's the right way. My dad taught us boys growing up, like, boys, you do the right thing and you do it right. Mm-hmm. And that was my takeaway from that chat with my colleague.
I just love that. So, okay. Let's say someone comes in and they have an autoimmune disease that they've had for a really long time. Can you kind of walk me through, like, where are some places you start looking that maybe are not common? People aren't like, oh, that's where you start with an autoimmune disease?
Totally. I think let's even back the truck up a little bit further and let's talk about the traditional mindset around autoimmunity. So Western medicine, and there's over 100 different autoimmune diseases, their philosophy of an autoimmune disease is that the immune system has literally gone rogue.
Yeah.
And so, for example, if it's MS, it's attacking your brain. If it's rheumatoid, it's attacking your joints. If it's Hashis or Graves, it's attacking your thyroid, et cetera, et cetera. So then their approach many times, like, for example, there's this family of drugs for people with rheumatoid called DMARDs, and they are essentially immunosuppressive therapy. So what they're saying is your immune system has gone rogue. We need to like reel it back in here and tell it to simmer down. And so then, and by the way, these DMARDs drugs are somewhere between $8,000 and $20,000 a month with about a 30% success rate. So if you don't have health, it's like, are you going to fork that out with that component? But they're immunosuppressive. And that's the point here, immunosuppressive. So when I had my first autoimmune patient, which was actually my wife's grandma, I wouldn't say she was a patient, she was an acquaintance. So she had Crohn's disease and MS, so gut brain, which now we know there's a huge gut brain connection. And she was treated at the mecca of all hospitals at Rochester at Mayo. And she was on immunosuppressive therapy. And this girl's quality of life was horrible. That's all I can say. And she was the sweetest woman in the world. Actually, our baby is partially named after Grandma Narita. And that got me curious because I was at that time, I was going to pursue a PhD in neurology because I was so intrigued by the brain and neurology and how it worked. And I remember getting that explanation of the immune system going rogue. And I was like, wait. There's 75 trillion cells in your body. And every second, there's a million bits of information being processed. Do you understand what actually has to happen for it to go rogue? Mm-hmm. So if it's not that, then what is it? So that goes back to the philosophy. I truly believe the body responds appropriately to the environment.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then, well, what's going on in the environments? And that got me looking at labs. And I don't know what my exact number is yet, Leah. I bet I'm close to 100,000 sets of labs. I'm a lab geek. I love the numbers. I love the data. And I will actually, and this is no diss to the people that do this, but actually I grew up in like the functional muscle testing world. Mm-hmm. And I've really, and nothing against them, but what I've found is, I found that how interesting was it that you always found something that was going on, and you always seem to have the vitamin on your shelf that they needed. And that I was kind of like, time out here. Nah, I love when I get labs back and I'm like, I'd have never guessed that.
Yeah.
That's why we do labs. Mm-hmm. So understanding that the body responds appropriately, the question is, what is it responding to? And, so let me just talk about immunology. I'll keep it as simple as I can for your listeners. So your immune system is amazing, by the way, and it has all these checks and balances, and it can detect if things are off. And like even for your people that listen, that you work with, like if you have an underlying infection, like, and you're tracking your cycles, it's completely going to throw off your temperatures because your body's like, hey, I've got an infection, right?
Yeah.
That's why we have a fever many times when we have an infection, because our body's trying to create an inopportune environment in our body to kill this thing off. So immunology 101. So your immune system detects a bacteria, for example. And in functional medicine, we use very different ranges, just like you do with your clients. So take white blood cells, for example. I like white blood cells between 5 and 8, roughly. So if you're hanging out between 5 and 8 and you've detected a bacterial infection, I think now let's talk in terms of war. Like you deploy the troops. So your white blood cells will be high, like 10, 11, 12, 13, and they're off to kill the bad guys. And then once they kill the bad guys, which they're really good at, then we have to use our drainage pathways. And drainage, we talked about this on the other podcast as well. Things have to get out. Like you have to get rid of things. So this is your gut, your liver. And I'm a huge liver fan. We talked about liver on your podcast too. Your liver depends upon the status of your gut, because your liver does not have its own exit point. So your liver dumps into your gut in 2 spots. Your lymphatic system, of which 80% lies within your liver and gallbladder, or your liver gut area. You have a glymphatic system, which is your brain's lymphatic system. You've got your respiratory system and even your sweat glands. So that's how, once you've killed the bad guy, your body uses the drainage pathways, gets it out, and then your body comes back to 5 and 8 and says, who's next? So that's immunology 101. There you go. There'll be a quiz at the end of the podcast today.
We're going to take a quick moment for today's sponsor. Seed cycling is such an easy hack to support the rise and fall of your hormones, and let me tell you why. They are rich in zinc, selenium, magnesium, vitamin E, soluble fiber, omega-3, and lignans. These are all necessary nutrients that your hormones need to function optimally. Now, obviously, please don't eat these seeds if you're allergic to them. But if you aren't allergic to them, seed cycling can be such an easy hack and part of your puzzle piece to add to your life to help support your hormone balance journey. You want to give it a minimum of 3 cycles in order to see a difference, because remember, you have that 90-day follicle journey. So from the start of that follicle to when it releases the egg is 90 days. So what you're doing right now is going to directly impact your period 3 months from now, right? Or 3 cycles from now. So you do want to stay consistent, but I bet if you add this in to all the other amazing things that you're already doing, you are going to really, really love it. So remember, seed cycling is 1 tablespoon of pumpkin and flax seeds from your period to ovulation every single day, whole organic seeds, and then grind them before eating them, because you don't want them to go rancid. And then from ovulation to period, you're going to do 1 tablespoon of sesame and 1 tablespoon of sunflower every single day. Remember, buy whole organic and then grind before eating. If you have no cycle, cycle with the moon, you guys. So the new moon, start your pumpkin and flax seeds, and then the full moon, start your sesame and sunflower seeds. Now, you guys, I use Funk It Wellness seed cycling subscription because I don't run out of my seeds, and they also taste better than the ones at the store. So Funk It Wellness uses B Corp organic certified seeds, and they are ground right before they send them to you, and they're in dark colored bags so light doesn't get through, so they won't go rancid, because ground seeds can go rancid pretty fast. So that's why you don't want to buy them ground at the store. They're ground right before they're sent to you, so you don't have to worry about them going rancid. They taste amazing, and you guys, not having to grind your seeds every single day has been the most life-changing thing for me being consistent with my seed cycling. So go to Funk It Wellness. You guys, do the subscription. You can cancel if you don't want to stick with it, but like, do the subscription because you get free shipping. Who doesn't want free shipping? And you'll get a discount. And then use the code LEAH15. You get an extra discount, making seed cycling extremely affordable.
Immunology 201 is you're hanging out at 5 and 8 and your body detects infections, and typically there's never just one. Mm-hmm. There's potentially a viral load, a parasitic load, a mycotoxin load, environmental toxin loads. What happens is, and these things are good and they can fight back. Mm-hmm. So now we're in a firefight, we're in a battle. And if we're not able to do the job that we need to, we can quote unquote lose our soldiers. Mm-hmm. So by the time people find me, and I'll tell you the typical conversation I have with patients is they'll say something like this: "Doc, you're my last chance. Yep. I don't know what I'm going to do if you can't figure this out." And I'm like, yeah, well, there's no pressure there. So what happens is if your body is unable, if your immune system is unable to do its job, and we start to lose those white blood cells, what happens many times, now we almost think of, like, in terms of war, we think of this thing like friendly fire. So there's the battle going on, and for whatever reason, if it's Hashimoto's, your thyroid got identified as the bad guy, so you're starting to throw bullets at the thyroid. Yeah. But if we take that premise that there's this underlying, infection or toxicity, imagine what happens to your body's ability to fight these infections and toxins if you're given immunosuppressive therapy. It's like saying there's a war in my backyard, and we're just going to pull the army. Yeah. What? Like, that means the enemy is going to overtake. Yep. And so what we do with these things is, number one, we do the right testing to figure out what are we up against. Then number two, and I think you have a very similar approach to this, we can't be up against a timeline. Yeah. We can't say, like, you're going to get good in 90 days. I mean, what the labs really tell me, especially from an infection, from a liver, from a gut standpoint, it gives us an idea of these are the mountain passes that we get to cross on our journey together. But what the labs don't tell me is when we get to, like, viruses, for example, or liver health, we have no idea how your body's going to respond. We have no idea how you are going to do through this journey. And so our approach is very different. There's no, like, hey, here's this pill or here's this program or recipe card, best of luck. And then I actually asked a patient this last week. I said to her, we got her labs back, and then Frank said to her, what percent of how you're feeling? So she had fatigue and all these other symptoms. I said, what percent of what you have going on do you think is clinically driven? And what percent of these things do you think are emotionally driven? Yep. And she said to me, 50-50. Yeah. And it was like, I can't agree with you anymore. I mean, I think you're right on. So I think also, if people are listening to this, what I don't want you to take is, oh, Dr. Greg has the magic pill, or all I got to do is, get rid of mold or kill Lyme. You need to be willing to do the dirty work. Yeah. Because I tell most people on this journey, remember we talked about those mountain passes, when you get to a place where you feel like you're up against something, it's almost always an emotional breakthrough, an emotional barrier that you get to walk through. And every single one of our clinicians in our practice are certified health coaches, and they all have special training in how to walk people through identifying mental barriers, working through mental barriers. Now, we're not mental health therapists, and
Mhm.
we do at many times refer people to get
Yeah.
higher level health. But I think what happens is I tell people like our secret sauce is our care philosophy. Think of it like train tracks. Rail number one is very clinical. Eat this, don't eat that, take this supplement, do a cold shower, do a coffee enema,
Mhm.
do a nebulizer. And then the other part is, if you were one of our patients, I would say part of our job is to make sure that Leah doesn't get in Leah's way of getting well.
Mhm.
So I tell people, but I tell also people, I said, this is really where the magic happens. The magic happens in those emotional, mental conversations.
Mhm.
And because you see this, people get caught in a rut and they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, maybe this is just as good as it gets. So we allow them to dream again, right? To vision again, like who do I want to be? You heard me talk about the epic family reunions. Like, who do you want to show up to that family reunion as? What is that? What energy that person has? What does she look like? How is she interacting?
Mhm.
All of those things is part of that journey.
Yeah. I think that peeling back the onion is sometimes the part that really gets people because when I work with women, I always tell them my promise is not that like I'm going to make you feel better in a certain amount of time. My promise is to give you tools. My promise is to educate you so that you start to understand your body because it's so hard when you like start feeling better, right? And then we rerun labs and we go, oh, look what we uncovered, like the second round. And they're like, are you kidding me? I just spent all this time getting rid of whatever. I'm like, yeah, well, now it uncovered the next level because you've been sick for so long. I think sometimes you hold on to the identity of being sick. So it's really hard to even imagine what it's like to be healthy. But
Mhm.
then we are sold in TV commercials everywhere that there's the pill for your symptom, right? We're never taught that like it's an unending journey. And so if you don't feel better in 30 days, 60 days, it can be really hard. And so I love that you have the mental health support because I mean I can pretty much guarantee you that is why most people quit.
No doubt about it. Right. They come up against something hard. And this world has said, this has taught us, right? If it gets tough, just bail. And there's a book that I love and I read a lot. So there's a book, and I talk to this with a lot of my patients. Ryan Holiday wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way.
Mhm.
And there's a fable where there's this huge stone in the middle of a path, and people are all frustrated because they have to walk around the stone and it takes them longer. And finally, someone comes to the stone and says, why don't we just move the stone?
Yeah.
Now, that takes work. It's a pain in the ass. And you have to do all this, like this is huge stone. And then as the fable goes, once they move the stone, there's a treasure that's
Mhm.
under the stone. So to recondition someone to say, all right, by the way, I know that your MO, your mode of operation, when things get tough, you bail.
Mhm.
We're aware of that. And we're going to call your you know what to the table when we get there. And we're also going to give you some tools along the way. And what is the obstacle? And what if the obstacle is not the obstacle, but what if it is truly a huge step to your
Mhm.
healing journey? I'll be honest with you. I mean, I get coached and I have a conversation to become a better person myself. And an example is in my journal, which is sitting right here. I have a letter to the 7-year-old version of myself because that little boy experienced some things that 7-year-old boys shouldn't experience. And I needed to go back as a 40 something year old grown man and heal that little guy. And
Mhm.
one of my mentors says, you heal the boy and the man appears, or heal the girl and the woman appears. And I think to be gentle and to understand that journey and to have some guidance through that journey. We're not taught that stuff. I mean, I was raised in a house where like you don't do emotions, like
Yeah.
you suck it up, buttercup, and you move on next thing. And I think it's time for us to like acknowledge the whole thing and
Mhm.
not just be like, oh, just take these vitamins and you'll be good, because it doesn't work.
Yeah. We must have the same coach because that was my exercise this week too, which is kind of weird. um, but something that I think is very interesting is that like the subconscious part of our healing that we don't realize. So something I've talked about with my clients when we first start is I'm like, okay, you have to identify like how do you react when things get tough? Do you shut down? Do you fight? Do you get like aggressive? Do you like what do you do? Do you disappear? Am I never going to hear from you again? Like what do
Right.
you do? um And I think it's the last thing they really expect. They want me to be like, hey, here's your protocol, eat this food, take these supplements. And I'm over here like, maybe we should get an acupressure mat and go walking your bare feet outside. So,
Yeah.
what are some things that you start having them incorporate that when your patients come in, they're very shocked. They're like, okay, that's not what I was expecting.
Right. Right. I call them God's and grandma's tools, the things
Okay.
that are free and they straight up work and they have for millennia.
Yeah.
So number one is most people don't even know how to breathe.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, yeah, I'm staying alive. Yeah, you're breathing up through your shoulders. You're getting your traps all tensioned. So just even teaching someone how to do a box breath,
Mm-hmm.
which costs nothing, to learn
Yeah.
how to activate their diaphragm, how to slow down, how to pause and just look around. I also, when people start with us, I have them take an inventory. Like I want to know like a true current state of the union. How's your and just for like from a body standpoint, how's your respiratory system? How's your cardiovascular system? How's your libido? How are your emotions? How's your poop? How are your joints? All of those things. But
Yeah.
also, how are your finances? How are your relationships? How's your self-talk? How are your friendships? Like, let's legit say, where are we? And then one of my business mentors, his name's Dan Sullivan, he wrote a book called The Gap and the Gain. And
Mm-hmm.
in the book, he talks so much about the importance of us having the ability to look around and acknowledge how far we've come, even if it's not as far as we think we should be. So
Yeah.
gain is the ability to look backwards and go, I'll be damned. I'm not where I was.
Mm-hmm.
The gap is looking to where you think you should be. And if you keep doing that, you're going to be, it's so defeating to your soul.
Yeah.
So number one, we really educate people how to look backwards and how to understand where things are at. We learn how to breathe. I am you got to drink water. Like,
Yeah.
let's get you hydrated. Let's get you moving. Let's just get you writing down what you're grateful for. Like, write down 3 things in the morning, what you're grateful for. There's amazing research on
Yeah.
that. Actually, I have an app. Dan Sullivan, who I talked about, has an app called Win Streak. And so at 7 o'clock every night, there's an app on my phone and it's free, by the way, for the listeners. Go download it. And it says, what were today's wins? What it forces me to do is go today. Okay, what happened today? My gosh, yeah. And then it asks you to forecast tomorrow's wins. And what he
Mm.
said and what's been found in research is if you have the audacity to forecast, like, your body is preempted. You've told your body, like, this would make tomorrow epic. And just a little thing that literally takes me a minute each night, and it's free. So that's super important. I have a whole list of things, like I enjoy cold therapy, but not everyone does that. But you got to start
Yeah.
simple. And really, the conversation that I tell everyone is the juice worth the squeeze, right? So, for example, some people are like, "Oh my gosh, those breath holds, you had me try those, and oh my gosh, game changer." And
Mm-hmm.
some are like, "Hey, I tried those and didn't really work." No problem. That's okay, because you talked about empowering people and giving people tools.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, when people journey with us, we want them to literally, I tell them when they start, like, here's a fishing rod and here's a couple fish. Eat off those fish for a while, but we're going to teach you how to fish.
Yeah.
We're going to teach you how to eat, how to shop, how to be grateful, how to cultivate what your future self would look like. So I love the low hanging things. And I tell people, here's the scoop, like, don't even take any supplements if you're not willing to do the free stuff. Because
Yes.
because if you're not willing to do that stuff, then why would we go all the way over here? And then also, I also tell people, like, you got to be willing to do the emotional hard work.
Mm.
Like, you can't skip over that one. And the reason why you're here after seeing 5 other functional medicine doctors is because they didn't miss a supplement, they didn't run the wrong lab, they didn't look at you as an entire person and do the
Yeah.
dirt with you. And in respectfully, most clinics don't have the team that I have that can have the truly intimate conversations with their clients. I mean, here's an example. We had a woman that was not in a very good relationship, and it took her to have her coach, her clinician in my clinic, have her come into our clinic and print out her divorce papers and sign them in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
She couldn't bring herself to it. And I'm not for divorce. I'm not saying that she was in a physically abusive relationship.
Yeah.
There's no place for those. But that's an example of, like, we care. And we
Mhm.
truly want people to do and a lot of people know what they're supposed to do, but they just need someone to, and that's where the accountability part comes into it as well. So there's a long answer to a short question.
No, I get that. Some people just need somebody to believe in them.
Oh my gosh, so true.
So, well, this is awesome. So, how can people find you? Obviously, you're on TikTok, but give us all the ways that people can find you, work with you, learn from you, all the good stuff.
I love that. So TikTok and Instagram, it's at Dr. Greg Health. And then we have an amazing clinic. I have an awesome team out here in Minnesota. We treat people literally around the world.
Yeah.
Vitae, which in Latin means life. So VITAEFM.com is our website. Jump on there, learn about what we do. And if it's a fit, we'd love to hear more from you. If not, just follow us on social and just let us love all over you and give you some tools.
Yeah, I'll make sure all of that is linked in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Leah.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Balancing Hormones Naturally. If you found this helpful, I would love for you to share it with a friend and post it on your stories and tag Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast so we can get this message out. You can find me on Instagram at Leah_BRUEG, and I would absolutely love to hear from you.